Have you ever heard of a girl so radiant that even the sun itself demanded her as a bride? Imagine being chosen, not by a warrior, not by a chief, but by the blazing star that rules the sky. Among the tribes of the Great Plains, there is an old story whispered by elders around the fire, the tale of a mortal girl carried into the heavens, where the sky burned with secrets. Why did the sun god want her? What trial awaited her in a world of endless light? And what survival wisdom hides in this legend, waiting to be rediscovered today? Stay with me, because this story is more than myth. It is a doorway into the ancient knowledge of Native Americans, where survival, love, and spirit are woven together like strands of smoke rising into the night. The story of the sun's bride begins not in the sky, but on the earth, on rolling plains, where the wind sings across tall grass, and the buffalo once moved like dark clouds over the horizon. Here, native people lived with sharp winters, blistering summers, and a constant need for balance with the land. Most of us grow up hearing a watered-down version of Native American life, tipis as simple tense, chiefs as one-man rulers, warriors always at war. But the truth is far more complex, more beautiful, and more demanding. These were societies engineered for survival, wisdom, and spirit. Every tool, every dance, every story was not only a tradition, it was a technology for life. And inside that life, myths were not just bedtime tales. They were maps. They carried warnings, lessons, and survival codes hidden in symbols. The Sun Bride legend is one of those maps. It tells of a girl who crosses the line between earth and sky. She enters a place no human was meant to go. Her story holds secrets about how to face the impossible, whether it's hunger, storms, or the crushing weight of destiny itself. So I'll ask you, could you survive even a single season under the conditions she lived in? Could you walk into the blinding light of the sun's lodge and return with your spirit intact? Tonight, as the fire crackles, we'll walk together through her world, her home, her people, her rituals, her trials, and discover what her story still has to teach us today. Before the girl was chosen by the sun, she lived among her people, who had already mastered one of the hardest lessons of the plains, how to build life out of almost nothing. Survival here was not luck, it was engineering. Take the tipi. Many imagine it as just a cone of hides thrown over poles, but look closer, and you see one of the most brilliant designs in human history. Strong against wind, cool in summer, warm in winter. A circle at the base, rising into a peak like a mountain, its shape echoing the balance of the world itself. The poles leaned into each other like relatives holding one another up. The hides, sewn tight, were angled to shed rain and snow. Inside, a fire burned at the center, the smoke climbing out through an adjustable flap. This was architecture built to move, fold, and rise again wherever the buffalo herds wandered. Every detail mattered. A single tipi could be raised in less than an hour by practiced hands. Women were the engineers, the builders. The placement of each pole followed an order, not just for strength, but for spiritual meaning. When storms howled, the family huddled inside, safe, listening to the thunder as though the sky itself was drumming. But survival was more than shelter. Tools carved from bone and stone turned the vast plains into a storehouse. A buffalo rib sharpened to scrape hides, a sinew cord strong enough to hold a bow tight. Flint, chipped until it gleamed with an edge sharper than steel, could slice meat or carve wood. Nothing was wasted. Even the bladder of a buffalo became a water container. Imagine standing in the middle of an endless grassland with no metal, no plastic, no electricity, only what you could carry, carve, and stitch. Could you last a week? A month? Fire itself was treated as a partner. Without it, winter nights would kill. With it, food could be dried and kept for months. The people knew how to coax flame from wood and stone, sparking life where none had been. Fire warmed, but it also taught respect. Too much, and it destroyed. Too little, and it abandoned you. The Sun Bride grew up learning these lessons. Her people taught her how to tan hides until they were soft enough for clothing. She knew how to grind roots into medicine, how to twist grasses into ropes, how to listen to the whistle of wind for warnings of storms. To be chosen by the sun, she first had to belong to the earth. Even the very ground carried wisdom. Streams guided travel. Hills gave shelter from the cutting wind. The stars overhead mapped the seasons, the herds, the migrations. The people were engineers of survival, but their blueprints were written in nature's patterns, not paper. And here lies a secret. The legend of the Sun Bride is not only about a girl lifted to the heavens. It's also about remembering that survival is built one careful choice at a time. A tippy standing against a storm is a prayer in wood and hide. A sharpened stone is a promise that tomorrow's hunt will succeed. When we picture her walking into the light of the sun's lodge, we must remember she carried all of this knowledge with her. She was not just a bride. She was a daughter of survival, raised in a world where every stitch, every spark, every breath was earned. So let me ask you, if you were taken from your modern life stripped of phones, cars and heaters, would you have the strength to endure even one winter the way she did? The answer to that question may hold the key to why her story still burns across generations. The girl who would one day be chosen by the sun did not wake up as a bride of the heavens. She woke as any other daughter of her people, with the smell of smoke in her hair and the sound of buffalo hooves somewhere in the distance. Her days began at first light. Women of the village stirred the fires back to life, coaxing embers into flame. The scent of roasted corn or drying meat often filled the air. Children fetched water from streams, their bare feet sinking into the mud, laughing even in the chill of dawn. Every hand had a task, and every task meant survival. Food was never taken for granted. A buffalo hunt meant a feast, but also weeks of careful work drying strips of meat, pounding them into powder, mixing with fat and berries to make pemmican. That mixture could last through harsh winters when hunting failed. Women scraped hides until they shone, turning them into warm robes, tippy covers, or moccasins soft enough to carry a traveler silently across the plains. Men mended bows, arrows, and lances. Even children learned early how to dig roots, set snares, or gather herbs that could heal fevers. But life was not only about survival. It was also about rhythm, spirit, and celebration. Every evening, the village pulsed with sound drums echoing like heartbeats, rattles shaking like rain. People danced around the fire, their steps telling stories older than memory. Dances honored the buffalo, the eagle, the storms. Each step was not just movement, it was prayer. The girl learned early that rituals were not separate from daily life, they were woven into it. Before planting seeds, her people sang to the earth. Before cutting wood, they offered thanks to the tree. Before hunting, they painted their faces and prayed to the spirits of the animals, asking permission to take what they needed. Can you imagine what life would feel like if every act from cooking to walking was sacred? She also witnessed ceremonies that marked the turning of seasons. The sun dance, for example, was not only a test of endurance, but also a way to renew the bond between people, earth, and sky. Warriors fasted, prayed, and sometimes pierced their flesh to prove their devotion. The girl saw in their courage a truth, that life required sacrifice, and survival required more than tools. It required spirit. For her, rituals also meant learning the songs of women's songs, of cradleboards and planting, of mourning and marriage. Elders taught her the stories of the stars, tracing with their fingers how the constellations moved across the sky like hunters chasing prey. She heard the legend of the great flood, of the trickster who stole fire, and of the mighty thunderbirds whose wings shook the mountains. These tales were her textbooks, each one layered with warnings, jokes, and wisdom. The elders reminded her, the sun watches us all. He sees how you walk, how you share, how you honor the earth. She never knew how literal those words would become. Daily life trained her for what was coming. The endless chores taught patience. The rituals taught reverence. The dances taught rhythm, balance, endurance. Her world was not rich in gold or palaces, but in knowledge so deep it kept her people alive for thousands of years. Think about this. If you had to live by ritual, if every act you made was tied to survival and spirit, would you still take shortcuts? Or would you, like her, learn that every action has weight, every choice has consequence? The girl did not yet know she would be chosen as a bride for the sun, but in every meal she helped prepare, every fire she fed, every song she sang, she was preparing for a journey far greater than she could imagine. No people can survive without learning how to defend what they love. The girl's tribe understood this well. On the Great Plains, danger was never far, whether from rival bands, raiders, or the wild power of animals themselves. Warfare was not constant, but when it came, it struck like lightning. The bow and arrow were the heart of defense and the breath of the hunt, carved from wood, strung with sinew, tipped with stone or bone. The bow was a perfect blend of art and science. Warriors could shoot while riding horses at full gallop, their arrows flying swift as hawks. Before horses arrived, warriors ran on foot, chasing buffalo or enemies with legs trained for endurance. Imagine sprinting across open plains, lungs burning, the ground shaking beneath you, while loosing arrows with deadly accuracy. Could you do it? But arrows were only the beginning. Spears, war clubs, and knives carved from flint or elk antler gave close combat its brutal edge. A war club, simple in design, a heavy stone tied to a wooden handle, could break bone with one swing. Knives were not only weapons, but tools, always at a warrior's side. Then came the horse, brought by the Spanish, stolen or traded, and soon mastered. The horse turned warriors into thunder. Battles stretched across miles. Raids struck fast and vanished before sunrise. For the girl's people, the horse was not just an animal. It was a partner in survival, a new set of wings on the open plains. Warfare itself carried ritual. Before battle, warriors painted their bodies, each color and symbol carrying power. Red for blood and life, black for strength, white for spirit. Some painted lightning across their cheeks to borrow speed from the storm. Songs were sung to call courage. Feathers from eagles were tied in their hair, believed to give vision and bravery. But here is a truth often forgotten. Warfare was not endless slaughter. Battles had rules, even honor. Sometimes the goal was not killing but counting coup, touching an enemy in the heat of battle and escaping unharmed. To strike without killing was a mark of supreme courage. Think about that for a moment. Could you risk your life not to destroy, but to prove your bravery? The girl saw these lessons as she grew. She saw warriors return from battle, their faces streaked with paint, their songs rising in victory or mourning. She saw shields made from thick buffalo hide, painted with symbols of protections, sunbursts, thunderbirds, animal guardians. She learned that a shield was more than leather. It was a prayer stretched tight, carried into danger. Weapons also protected the people from hunger. The same bow that defended against enemies also brought down deer, elk, and buffalo. The same knife that cut rope in camp could become a lifeline in the wild. Survival meant knowing that every weapon was both tool and spirit. The girl, though not a warrior herself, absorbed these truths. She understood that strength did not come only from muscle, but from courage, preparation, and respect for power. Later, when she would face trials in the Sun's Lodge, she carried this spirit within her. The knowledge that weapons are not only for battle, but for survival, for balance, for life itself. So I'll ask you, if you were thrust into her world, could you defend yourself with nothing but wood, stone, and sinew? Could you face the storm of hooves and arrows, the roar of enemies charging across the plains? The people of her tribe did not ask that question. They lived it, and so did she, long before the sun's light claimed her, before the sun called her away. The girl lived in a village that pulsed with life far beyond human voices. To her people, the earth was not silent. It breathed, it spoke. Every animal that walked, flew, or crawled was not just a creature, it was a relative. The buffalo, first of all, was the great provider. One buffalo could feed, clothe, and shelter a family. Meat for the stomach, hides for the tipi, sinew for thread, bones for tools. Nothing was wasted. But the buffalo was more than survival, it was sacred. Songs were sung in its honor, prayers were whispered before each hunt. Hunters painted their faces, not out of arrogance, but out of respect, asking forgiveness for what must be taken. Can you imagine treating every meal as a holy gift instead of a casual bite? Then there was the eagle, soaring high where earth touched sky. To carry an eagle feather was not a trophy, it was a spiritual burden. Feathers symbolized honor, courage, vision. They were given to warriors for bravery, to leaders for wisdom. In ceremonies, feathers were lifted toward the heavens, like antennae catching messages from the spirits. The girl often watched eagles circle above the plains, their wings wide against the sun. Did they know, she wondered, that one day she would join their flight into the sky itself? Wolves were teachers of loyalty and family. They hunted in packs, sharing food, protecting each other. To her people, the wolf was a guide, showing how unity ensured survival. Bears carried the spirit of strength and healing. Their claws were worn as charms, their power invoked in prayers for courage. Even the coyote, sly and playful, carried lessons. Trickster tales told how the coyote stole, lied, and stumbled, yet always revealed hidden truths. The girl listened to these stories around the fire, but she also lived them. She saw how her people mimicked the animals in dance, their movements turning into prayers. Buffalo dances, eagle dances, deer dances, all meant to honor and invite the power of those beings into human life. To dance like an animal was to remember that humans were not above creation. But part of it, her daily chores, tied her closer to nature. Gathering berries taught her which plants healed and which poisoned. Watching herds taught her the signs of migration. She learned to read the sky, clouds signaling rain, birds flying low before storms. To survive meant paying attention, and paying attention meant respect. This bond went deeper than practical skill. It shaped the soul. Her people believed that dreams could carry animal guide spirits who came at night to teach, warn, or protect. A child might dream of a bear and wake, knowing strength would walk beside him. Another might see a hawk and learn to be watchful. Did the girl dream of the sun before he came for her? No one can say, but she grew up knowing that dreams were as real as daylight, and that the natural world was always speaking. One day, when she was old enough, she joined her people in a ceremony where they fasted in solitude. No food, no water, just silence under the sky, waiting for a vision. Many who endured spoke of animals appearing in their dreams, giving them songs or medicine. Some came back with eagle feathers, others with bear claws, each symbol a bond with the unseen world. It is easy, today, to think of animals as distant, seen through glass in a zoo, or blurred from a car window. But for the girls, people, animals were neighbors, friends, and guides. They were proof that survival was not a human achievement, but a partnership. So when the sun chose her, he did not take a stranger. He took a girl already fluent in the language of earth and sky, a girl who knew the power of feather and fur, claw and hoof, and that knowledge, those bonds, would become her strength when she crossed into the world of the sun. Long before the girl was taken into the heavens, her people told stories that braided the world of flesh with the world of spirit. To them, there was no sharp line between the two. The wind carried voices, rivers remembered songs, and the sky itself was alive with powerful beings. At the center of these beliefs stood the sun, The sun was not only a light in the sky, it was a watcher, a father, a giver of life. Without the sun, no seed grew, no child thrived, no hunt succeeded. Every dawn was seen as a gift, every sunset as a promise that light would return. To live under the sun was to live under constant witness. "The sun sees you," elders said. Those words carried both comfort and warning. The moon, too, was honored sister of the sun, keeper of cycles, guardian of women. The stars were campfires of ancestors, watching from above. Thunderbirds flapped their mighty wings in storm clouds, their eyes flashing as lightning. The earth itself was a mother, the waters her veins, the mountains her bones. This was a world alive, breathing, listening. In this world, myths were more than entertainment. They were teaching tools. They explained why rivers flowed, why storms came, why humans must live with humility. The tale of the trickster coyote reminded people that pride leads to downfall. The story of the great flood warned against greed, and the legend of the sun's bride carried one of the deepest lessons of all: the price of walking between worlds, according to the tale. The sun looked down one day and saw a girl whose beauty shone like dawn. He desired her as his wife. She was taken up into the sky, where his lodge blazed with light. At first, she marveled at the wonders of his realm. The walls glowed with fire, the floor shimmered like gold. But soon she discovered that life in the heavens came with trials. She longed for her family, for the smell of earth after rain, for the voices of her people. Some versions of the story say she grew pregnant with the sun's child. Others tell that she was trapped, forbidden to return home. Either way, her heart ached for the land below. She plotted escape, weaving a rope of sinew and hides to climb back to earth. When she finally returned, the rope snapped, leaving her stranded between sky and land. In some tellings, she becomes the morning star, forever caught in the heavens, yet gazing back toward her people. What does this mean? To her people, it was not just romance or tragedy, it was a map. The sun's bride taught that no one can live only in spirit or only in flesh. We must walk both worlds, the world of survival and the world of belief. To forget either is to lose balance. This legend also reminded listeners of responsibility. To be chosen by the sun was not glory alone, it was burden. Just as warriors bore the weight of eagle feathers, she bore the weight of being seen by the heavens themselves. And isn't that the truth of survival, even today? That every gift, every power, carries a price. The girl grew up surrounded by these beliefs, hearing them in song, dance, and story. So when the sun himself reached for her, it was not entirely a shock. She had been told all her life, the spirits are watching. The only question was, when they call, will you be ready? Life on the Great Plains was never still. The people moved like the herds, like the winds, like the very stars shifting across the sky, for the girl who would one day become the sun's bride. Each season brought a new lesson, a new test of endurance. In spring, the land awakened. Rivers swelled with melted snow. Wild plants pushed through the soil, and animals birthed their young. The people planted when possible, though the plains were not always kind to farming. More often, spring meant travel following herds, gathering roots, and repairing tippus worn by winter storms. It was a season of preparation. The girl watched her mother sew fresh hides, her father mend arrows, her brothers stretch sinew into strong bowstrings. Spring said, "Be ready, for plenty will not last." Summer brought both abundance and danger. Buffalo thundered across the plains, their bodies dark against golden grass. Hunts were organized, drives carefully planned. Warriors rode hard, guiding herds toward traps or cliffs, while hunters loosed arrows with practiced skill. The girl's people worked quickly to butcher, dry, and store the meat. Summer was also a time of gathering berries, herbs, wild grains, and of great ceremonies. Dances and rituals honored the sun asking for health and success. The heat of the season reminded them that life was fragile. One failed hunt, one drought could mean hunger by winter. Autumn was the season of motion. The people packed their tipis and followed the herds south or toward sheltered valleys. It was a time of sharpening weapons, of storing food, of preparing for the cold moons ahead. Fires grew larger in the evenings, stories longer, laughter louder, as families knew the hardest season loomed. For the girl, autumn meant listening closely to the elders' warnings. Do not waste. Do not forget. Winter remembers. And winter did come swift, brutal, endless. Winds screamed across the plains. Snow buried the grass. Rivers froze solid. In those months, survival depended on the wisdom of the past. Stored pemmican, dried meat, and tanned hides became lifelines. Fires roared at the center of tipis, smoke drifting through the vent above. Families huddled together for warmth, telling stories deep into the night. Some nights, hunger gnawed. Some mornings, frost clung to every breath. Yet within that struggle, spirit grew strong. The girl learned that winter was not only an enemy, it was a teacher. It demanded patience, unity, and faith. This cycle of seasons was not random. It mirrored the very beliefs of her people. Spring was birth, summer life, autumn preparation, winter death, and then rebirth again. Everything moved in circles. The seasons, the stars, the ceremonies, even the drum beats in their songs. To live was to move with the circle, not against it. The legend of the sun's bride echoed this cycle. When she was taken into the heavens, it was like spring, a new beginning, full of awe and light. Living in the sun's blazing lodge was like summer, abundance, but also danger. Her escape and longing for home mirrored autumn, the time of transition, of gathering strength. And when she fell whether into the morning star or into memory, it was like winter, an end, but not the final one. Her story continued, reborn, every time it was told around a fire. Adaptation was survival. Without it, no one lived long on the plains. But adaptation was also spiritual. To resist the seasons was foolish. To flow with them was wisdom. The girl's people knew this, and perhaps that is why her legend survived. She herself became part of the cycle, earth to sky, sky to earth, myth to memory. So I'll ask you, if stripped of modern comforts, could you adapt to the turning of seasons, as her people did? Could you face hunger with patience, storms with courage, and still find joy in dance and story? That was their way. That was her way. What does a girl chosen by the sun have to do with us people who live with electricity, grocery stores, and glowing screens in our pockets? More than you might think. Her world, and the wisdom it carried, has not vanished. It waits for us to listen. First, her story teaches respect for balance. She was caught between two worlds, the blazing sky and the green earth. She could not live only in the sun's light, nor only in her people's shadow. Isn't that the same choice we face today? Many of us live pulled between nature and technology, spirit and survival. Her tale reminds us, both worlds matter. To forget the earth is to lose our roots. To forget spirit is to lose our purpose. Second, her people's survival skills carry lessons for resilience. Imagine a winter without heaters, without stocked shelves. They endured with knowledge passed down, how to store food, how to read the sky, how to adapt. Today, we rely on fragile systems that could vanish in a storm or blackout. What would we do if the lights went out? Their wisdom whispers, prepare, respect, and remember that survival is built on unity. Third, her people's rituals teach gratitude. Before eating, they prayed to the buffalo. Before cutting wood, they thanked the tree. How often do we pause before tearing open a plastic wrapper or flicking on a switch? Gratitude changes survival into harmony. It transforms consumption into connection. The Sun Bride's world calls us to see everything, not just food and water, but time, energy, and relationships as sacred gifts. Fourth, her people's view of animals offers a new way to live. They did not see buffalo, wolves, or eagles as resources alone, but as relatives. What would change in our world if we treated nature as kin instead of commodity? Would we poison rivers so easily if we thought of them as our grandmother's veins? Would we drive animals to extinction if we called them cousins? The sun bride's people would say, no. Fifth, her journey itself speaks to courage. She was taken into the unknown, forced to adapt, and still found strength to seek her home. That resilience belongs to all of us. Life always pulls us into strange places. Loss, change, challenges we never expected. Her legend shows that even in blinding light, even in loneliness, a human spirit can endure. And finally, her myth teaches that stories themselves are survival tools. Around the fire, people remembered. They told of hunts and battles, of storms survived, of lessons learned. These stories were not just entertainment, they were blueprints for life. Today, we drown in endless information, but how much of it guides us when crisis strikes? Her people's stories still do. They remind us who we are, where we came from, and how to walk forward without losing our way. So what lessons can we carry today from the girl who became the sun's bride? Respect balance, prepare for hardship, practice gratitude, honor nature as kin, endure with courage, tell stories. Her legend is not a relic of the past, it is a mirror for the present. If you listen closely, you can almost hear her voice carried on the wind, asking the same question we've asked throughout this tale. When the sun calls, when life demands courage, will you be ready? The day came when the sun himself looked down and claimed her. Some say she was gathering plants, her hands stained with earth, when a beam of light wrapped around her and pulled her upward. Others say she dreamed at first, dreamed of fire, dreamed of wings, dreamed of a voice calling her Namand. When she woke, the dream had become real. However it happened, the girl vanished from the earth and rose into the heavens. She found herself in the sun's lodge, a place too bright for mortal eyes. The walls glowed with fire, the roof shimmered with heat, the floor itself pulsed like molten gold. The sun sat before her, blazing with power. You are mine, he said, his voice deep as thunder. You will live in my lodge, and bear my children, and share in my light. At first, she was dazzled. Everything shone. She walked through halls lined with radiant fire, touched objects that hummed with energy. She wore garments woven from beams of light, but soon the wonder faded. The air burned too hot. The brightness blinded her. She longed for the cool grass beneath her feet, the voices of her people, the comfort of night. Days stretched into weeks. She grew restless. Though the sun gave her food and gifts, she felt trapped. She realized that to live in constant light was not life at all, it was a cage. Her heart ached for earth, for balance, for the circle of seasons. She remembered the buffalo, the eagle, the wolf. She remembered her people's songs, and she began to plan. In secret, she gathered scraps, fibers, sinews, threads of light itself. She wove them together into a rope, long and strong. Each night, while the sun traveled across the sky, she worked quickly, her hands guided by memory and determination. Finally, the rope was finished. One dawn, as the sun prepared to rise, she tied the rope to the beams of his lodge and lowered herself toward the earth. Down she climbed, her heart racing, the world below calling her home, but the rope was too short. Some say it snapped, others say the sun cut it in fury. She fell, her body struck the earth. In some tellings, she died, and her spirit rose as the morning star, forever watching the sky. In others, she lived, bearing the sun's child, a hero destined to guide her people, but all versions agree. Her descent was the price of walking between worlds, and here lies the lesson of her legend. No human can live only in light. or only in darkness. We belong to both. To walk too far from earth is to lose ourselves. To walk without spirit is to be hollow. The sun bride's fall was not failure, was balance restored. When her people told this story around the fire, they looked up at the morning star and remembered her. They saw not tragedy, but strength. A girl who dared to climb down from the heavens and return to her people, no matter the cost. The story of the girl who became the sun's bride is not just about beauty or power or tragedy. It is about balance. She touched the sky, but she never forgot the earth. She lived in light, but she longed for shadow. And in the end, her fall was not the end of her story. It was the continuation of her people's wisdom around the fire. Elders told her tale to remind listeners that life is not meant to be lived in extremes. Too much light blinds, too much shadow suffers. Survival, spirit, and strength are found in the middle path, in the circle where day meets night, where summer yields to winter, where humans walk with both earth and sky. For her people, she became a star, a guide, a symbol of courage. They pointed to her place in the heavens and said, "There she is, the one who dared to climb down." For us, she is still a mirror. She asks, do you remember to honor both your survival and your spirit? Do you balance your hunger for progress with respect for the earth? Do you walk with gratitude, as she once did? The girl's life was a lesson written in light and shadow. And like all great stories, it still whispers truth today. She reminds us that we too are caught between two worlds, the old and the new, the natural and the modern. Our task is not to choose one and abandon the other. Our task is to weave them together, as she once wove her rope of light, strong enough to carry us home. So now you know the story of the girl who was chosen as a bride for the sun god, a tale of survival, spirit, and balance that still burns in the night sky. But her story is only one ember in a fire that has been burning for thousands of years. There are countless legends, survival secrets, and forgotten truths waiting to be told. If this story stirred something in you, if it made you wonder, or question, or imagine, then stay with us. More journeys like this are coming. Subscribe, share this tale with someone who loves stories, and keep the fire alive. Because every time we tell these legends, they breathe again. And who knows? The next story may hold a piece of wisdom you've been waiting to hear. So don't let the fire die. Stay close. The next legend begins soon.